Every year, my family has our annual family game night. It's me, my brother, my sister, and my parents. The way we do things isn't exactly traditional, but when I first participated, I didn't know that. I am the youngest of my siblings, and we must wait until we are a certain age in order to participate in game night. Seems kind of strange needing an age requirement to play a family board game. Well, you see, that's the thing. My family wasn't playing board games at all. My family is wealthy beyond measure. That explains the size of our house and the amenities we have. And they take care of me, but I must admit I am fearful at times. I know we have secrets. I know that everyone hides them well. Now, this year it was my turn to prove my dedication to protecting the family and its confidentiality. I was excited but nervous. I didn't really know what to expect. Perhaps I was most looking forward to the prize awarded at family game night, which is naturally a huge sum of money. Family game night takes place in the basement. This way, the outside can't hear us. I would soon find out why that was important. We live far away from other people, but better safe than sorry, I suppose. Our basement is overdone with ornate furniture, vintage wallpaper, mood lighting, velvet curtains, and we even have a fireplace down there. We call it the parlor room. The whole thing is kind of sexy, really. I'm confident my parents use this place for a little more than just family game night once a year. I don't want to imagine that, though. I was allowed to go down there under the conditions that I do not touch the wheel. I didn't know what the wheel really was because there was always a white sheet draped over it. A couple times I got really close to it and tried to decipher what was hidden, but I had no luck. But a week ago, I got to see the wheel for the first time. My family gathered around and my mother pulled the sheet away, revealing the infamous wheel. It was like the Wheel of Fortune wheel, but smaller and less colorful. There were no vacations or fun prizes listed. The wheel itself was elevated on some kind of thick, solid mahogany stand. The whole thing was covered with these fancy carvings. The wheel on top was black with gold borders and accents all around. Each section had a golden handle erected from the edge of the circle. There were no visible words on the wheel. You wouldn't know what you landed on until you picked up the section and revealed what lay below. There was a tab jutting into the circle that would slow the wheel and select a section after each spin. "Do us the honors," my mother said as she turned to me. It wasn't so much a request, but rather an order. I stood there for a second and then I stepped forward. I had watched the show before. I knew how to spin the wheel. I reached and held onto one of the handles and I spun it. We stood there for what felt like 10 full minutes, but was actually probably 30 seconds. The wheel spun around and around until it gradually lost momentum and the tab started to come closer and closer to a decision as to where it was going to land. Finally, the wheel slowed to a halt. "Pick it up," my mother said. "Show us what it says." I reached forward and lifted the panel on the section the tab had landed on. I saw just one word. "Go on, what does it say?" my sister insisted. "Operation." "Operation? We haven't played this one in years." "Oh, Finnegan, that's easy work for you. We only need one this time. Off you go." We have a butler. His name is Finnegan, and he has been loyal to us for decades. I believe the story goes that he was with my family back when my grandparents owned this house. He must be old, but he looks great for his age. He's actually quite handsome, but he's a pretty reserved man. I try to talk to him when I can, but we never get very far. I let him do his work. At this time of year, Finnegan's tasks are not that of a normal butler. I didn't know exactly what my mother sent him to get, but I would later learn that it was not what, but whom. The week continued on as usual. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. My mother even baked cookies. She was a really good baker. She used these fun cookie cutter shapes to make them. There was a star, a moon, some circular ones. I even helped her bake this time. I wasn't close with my mom, but we could bond over little things like this. I still didn't know too much about her or her interests, but activities like these were baby steps, I guess. One night the house was quiet, just the usual creaks and groans from the stairwell. I was sitting on my bed when I heard the front door swing open. I crept over to the door in my room, which was already open just a crack. I opened it a few more inches and listened. Two men entered the house. Both were trying to muffle their own laughter as to not disturb the family. Okay, come with me. Would you like a drink? Not that either of us really need another. I recognized that voice. It was Finnegan. He chuckled a bit as he spoke. The two must have had quite a time together. The man he was with responded yes, and the two ventured farther into the house. I had nothing better to do, and I had never really seen Finnegan act this way, so I snuck downstairs to try and see what was going on. I found a hidden vantage point and watched the two interact. The man was sitting on the living room couch. His legs were crossed and he was leaning back, almost too comfortable in a house that wasn't his. Finnegan was over at the bar cart. He was preparing 2 Manhattans. He was an incredible unofficial bartender. He added a bit of garnish and brought both glasses over to the man on the couch. He handed him one. "I am glad you agreed to come over," Finnegan said as he sat on a couch opposite the stranger. "Well, how could I resist? With an offer like that, only a fool would say no." Finnegan adjusted in his seat. The two of them talked for a bit before Finnegan asked a disturbing question. "How old did you say you liked them?" "Young," the man chuckled. "But not too young. I have class, you know." Finnegan forced a smile. "Well, I think I might just have what you're looking for." Finnegan stood up and guided the man to the elevator. There were 2 ways of getting to the parlor room, the stairs and the elevator. Why did we have an elevator? I honestly have no idea, but we were wealthy and I guess a vintage elevator fit right in. So Finnegan and the man entered the elevator and I snuck over to the stairs. I waited for the doors to close before I would begin my descent. I walked down the stairs and saw my sister. She was tied to a chair and wearing lingerie. "What the?" I kinda whispered. "What are you doing down here?" She whispered back. "You can't be down here." "What are you doing? Who did this?" "Shh, they're coming." The elevator bell rang, which meant the doors were about to open. "You need to hide. They can't see you. Stay quiet." I dropped down and hid. I couldn't see much, but I could certainly hear everything. Finnegan and the man stepped out of the elevator. My, the man said. "Would you look at that?" I'm assuming he reached his hand forward to touch her, but was stopped when Finnegan said, No, you can look for now, but you can't touch." "She's so well behaved." The man was creepy. If I didn't know it before, I knew it now. "How much for her?" "How much are you offering?" Was Finnegan about to sell my sister to this man? I had no idea what was happening. Why did she tell me not to talk? Why didn't she want me to help her? The 2 men negotiated a deal. That was it. What had I done? Or not done, rather. I was scared and confused. Then all of a sudden, I heard choking. The stranger was choking hard and dropped his glass. No one was doing anything to help him. I heard a thump. He must have fallen. "Once again, my dear, splendid work," Finnegan said to my sister. I heard him begin to untie her. "Of course. I do what I can. Where do you find these guys?" "There are plenty. You just have to know how to get into their circles." I laid there in silence, relieved. At least I knew that Finnegan wasn't a creep too. At least my sister was not being sold. Was I allowed to come out now? I didn't know. Honestly, I was too shocked to move. I just laid there, motionless. After about 20 minutes, Finnegan had gone. My sister came up to me. "What are you doing down here? You could have really messed things up." "I don't know. I heard Finnegan come in and I was curious. I don't really know what is going on." "I know you're confused, but all you need to know is that we found a bad man and now he's ours. We needed someone. We don't just grab any innocent person off the street. We aren't monsters." I don't really understand what you're talking about. What's all this for? I was so confused. Game night, she replied. Doesn't really matter right now. Just go to sleep and just know that we are doing good things. I had a hard time falling asleep that night, but eventually I did and a few days passed. During each of these days, Finnegan was especially busy. I knew this because I hardly saw him. He spent most of his time in the parlor. I had no idea what he was doing, but I assumed it had to do with the fact that there was a stranger in our house. A hostage that I and my sister knew about. I'm guessing my parents knew too because my mother was the one who told Finnegan to get him in front of all of us. Either way, I was confused and freaked out. It was a week after I spun the wheel and tonight was game night. My family ate a delicious meal that I helped my mother cook. There were 3 full courses, we lit candles to set the mood, and even Finnegan had emerged from the depths of the parlor to participate. We were presented with warm towelettes after it all, a treat we did not usually experience. This was because tonight was special. After dinner had concluded, Finnegan led us all to the parlor. The whole family followed him, and I was last. There were all these little quirks involved with family game night. As the newest member, I got to spin the wheel, and I had to be the last one to enter the parlor, and Finnegan had to be the first. We surrounded a table in the middle of the room. It was ornate and beautifully decorated like the one on which the wheel was mounted. There was now a white cloth draped over this table instead. It was obvious what lay underneath. My mother did the honors of removing the cloth, much like how she did with the wheel. She really got a thrill out of doing this part. She gasped when she revealed the body on the table. I gasped too, except I was horrified. My mother and my family were in awe. I felt like I was going to throw up. Finnegan, what beautiful work! My mother was delighted. Oh, this is truly one of the best. Of course, madam. He nodded and proudly accepted her approval. Oh, how incredible is this? My mother leaned in and examined every part of it. I don't know what usually happens at family game night, but after tonight, I know that it's dark. The man lying on the table was the man that Finnegan had brought home, except he was modified. He was naked with 12 holes in his body, 3 on his chest, 1 on each arm, 3 on his stomach, and 2 on each leg. The holes in his body were gouged open with something all too familiar. I recognized these metal shapes as the cookie cutters I had just used with my mother. Each cookie cutter had a cable clamped to the exterior. The wire attached to each clamp was hooked up to a big battery that rested behind the man's head. And finally, in the man's mouth was a ball gag, one of the red ones, and this too was modified in some sort of light source and attached to a battery. After I took all of this in, I understood what this family game night would entail. The family was about to play Operation. The rules of this game are simple as can be, my father chanted. Use these tongs, he said as he raised a pair in the air, and pull out the objects within. My father then demonstrated the action on one of the man's stomach holes. But don't hit the metal. He deliberately hit the metal cookie cutter with the metal tongs, which then sent a shock throughout the body of the stranger. He was strapped down and his body shuddered as he felt the shock and the light on the ball gag lit up. He was awake now. I don't know what was going through the man's head. Was he in shock? Did he truly understand what Finnegan had done with his body? His head was strapped down too, so he couldn't look down to see the truth. He screamed for a bit, or at least tried to scream, as he also avoided choking on his own saliva. His cries for help evolved into a whimper. Also, the anesthesia will wear off as the game progresses, so he will feel far more than just the shocks. This means that he might be a little more jumpy, so you need to win fast. Whoever removes the most pieces wins. We took turns. Each of us had 20 seconds to pick a hole and use the tongs to fish through the man's insides and remove one of the various plastic objects hidden inside. My brother went first as he was the winner last year. Don't mess up, my father said. We added a $100 bonus this year in honor of our new member. He looked at me and smiled. Stop distracting me. My brother bit his bottom lip as he slowly moved the tongs inside the man's chest. The man whimpered a bit. I don't think he could feel any pain just yet. My brother found the first plastic shape and pulled it out successfully. Next, my dad was up. He tried one of the armholes but failed miserably. The ball gag lit up and another harsh shock was sent through the man's body. My mom went and then my sister. Then it was my turn. My hands were shaking when I took the bloody tongs from my sister's hand. I approached the man's body. No one had attempted any of the leg holds yet, so I decided to go for those. They also happened to be the farthest from the man's face, which I couldn't bring myself to look at any longer. I took my turn. This cycle would continue until a winner was decided. I cried in my room that night. I was curled up in a ball in the fetal position on my bed, and I was just crying my eyes out. My sister walked in. She sat down on my bed next to me and put a hand on my back. Hey, stop all this crying. Winners don't cry. She nodded over to the bundle of money on my bedside table. You're a natural, she said. I just wanted it to be over with, I uttered. He was a bad man. He had it coming. I know he was a bad man, but did he really deserve that? I think so. I think our family is doing good for the world. She stood up and walked towards the doorway. Opened or closed? Closed, I replied. She closed the door behind her. After my first family game night, I am just laying here. There are a million things going through my head. I think my biggest question is what other games are on that wheel? And what has my family made of them?